this week's Expert Insight series. We're talking about a very, very, very hot topic and extremely relevant and useful topic to residential communities and body corporates. And that is, how do we secure solar infrastructure funding? And we are very happy to have Jaltech Fund Management here today, Jaltech Sachs, who's going to be speaking to us about their particular solution. I have received a number of questions through the signing up of this webinar, and we're going to do our best to tackle those questions. Just to give you a quick bit of housekeeping, I would say, before we start the webinar, if you look at the bottom of your little screen, you should notice a box that says chat. If you select that chat box and make sure that in the drop-down menu, everybody is selected, that will enable you to post any additional questions, or as you're listening to the presentation, a question comes to mind, pop it in there. The presentation itself is about 15 or 20 minutes, and then that relieves us with a fair amount of time to tackle a few of the questions. We're also going to be running a few polls this morning. So we're going to pop a poll up now onto your screen so you can see what it looks like. It's really great if you answer the polls. It gives us a nice idea of who is in the audience, which sort of sector you're looking at, and just helps us get a good idea of who we're speaking to. If you can complete that poll, once you've completed your answer, please feel free to just click on the little red toggle that is in the corner of the screen, and that will immediately remove the poll out of the line of sight, so you can get back onto enjoying the webinar. So I would like to introduce Jaltech. Jaltech, I don't know if you want to come online now and let us hear a little bit more about Jaltech, what solutions you have, and how this will benefit our homeowners associations and body corporate management and property managers.
Great.
Welcome.
Thanks very much for the introduction, and thank you everyone for attending. I must say, really impressed with the amount of interest and people attending today's webinar. So thank you for your time. Just some background. My name is Jaltech Sachs. I'm one of the partners at Jaltech. My former life, I was a lawyer at Edward Nathan Sonnenberg's, but I saw the light and moved away from law. And I've been at Jaltech for 9 years. I'm one of the owners of the business. We've been in business for around 11 years. And we're an asset manager. We raise capital from the retail market. We manage over 2 billion Rand across various types of investments that we offer. And one of the funds that we're managing at the moment is a solar fund. And what I'll do is I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to take you through our proposition in the market at the moment. And please just give me a thumbs up if you can see that.
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. What we are seeing at the moment is a huge amount of interest in the solar sector. And our proposition is we're offering estates, body corporates, complexes, really any property owner. We're offering them with a funding solution. So instead of going to a bank, and I'll give you the reasons why you would choose us over a bank, you come to us and we'll provide long-term finance for a solar installation. Our funding is really impressive. I think it's the best in the market. And at the moment, we're financing around 50 million Rands worth of deals, which are being brought to our investment committee on a monthly basis at the moment. Monthly, we're seeing about 200 million Rands worth of deals, but those narrow down only to around 50 million, which we can really take to our investment committee per month. So there's a huge amount of interest. We're doing a lot of estates. We're doing a lot of body corporates at the moment, for all the right reasons, not only because of load shedding, but the primary reason is when you look at the Rand value that energy can be produced from solar, it makes a lot of sense to move to solar for an estate, particularly over the next 10 years. It is really going to be way more affordable than Eskom, given their historic increasing in rates of electricity. So it makes a lot of sense for estates to move over, and a huge portion of the market are making that move at the moment. So as I briefly mentioned, our focus is to provide long-term finance in the commercial and industrial area, body corporates, estates, and developers. If you are a developer and you're rolling out various developments, we'd love to partner up with you and come up with a financing structure which makes sense for your business. And I'm going to talk you through that in a couple of moments. So we really have two solutions. Our first solution is we'll play a role as a bank, which I'm going to explain. And the second solution is you may be an estate or property owner, and you just don't want to get involved in the admin, in understanding what are the different solutions. You just want someone to take everything over and say, this is what it's going to cost monthly for electricity. So we offer a turnkey solution, and this is really where we partner up with solar installers, but I'm going to take you through that in a moment. If you have questions, as Louise mentioned, put them in this chat section. I'll answer them. If you're shy or you're running out of time, my information will be made available to you. This recording will be made available to you. So really happy to meet with you one-on-one, to answer your questions, to answer any issues, clarify things. But often these type of webinars are really just to give you a sense of what we do. And potentially there's an opportunity. So please feel free to either engage now, or you'll have my details probably late in the week or next week. So direct funding, what are your options in the moment? Really is for an estate or a property owner to go to a bank. Normally what happens is a solar installer will do a quotation, and the estate or property owner will approve the quotation, and then really what will happen is you'll need to go to a bank, and the banks in almost all instances will only give finance for around 70, if you're very fortunate, or 80% of the required capital needed. So the property owner would need to put down a deposit or a equity contribution of 20 or 30% of the required amount, and put down security or sign surety agreements, bond properties, in order to give the bank the peace of mind that their debt facility has some security backing it if there is a default. So very onerous on the banks, and you need cash available to be able to do this. Once the bank approves you, which will probably take 3 to 6 months, you'll go back to the solar installer. Hopefully the quotation is still valid. You'll make the capital available to them. They will then buy the assets, install it, and then you have electricity. So to give you a summary of what the bank's offering, around 70% debt funding, prime plus 2 to prime plus 6%. And this is one of the most important points, is the banks will only give funding of 5 to 7 years, in very rare instances 10 years. Now this term is very short when it comes to solar. Solar assets have a long 15-year lifespan, depending on the mix of batteries. If there is batteries have a shorter lifespan. But because the lifespan is so long, if you shorten the payment period, which banks have a requirement they do, the payments to the banks on an annual basis, in many instances, is more than the rand value of the electricity produced. So you may be paying the bank R1 million a year for the facility, but their systems are only producing 700,000 rand of electricity. So that shortfall of 300,000 rand, the property owner would need to, on a monthly basis, pay into the bank. So it has a negative cash flow implication. And that's because the banks aren't able to offer longer terms, 5 to 7 year terms. The other downside with going with the bank is it takes a lot of time. Banks see a lot of deals, and their processes are very long and tiresome. So there's a long deal turnaround. And my final comment that I mentioned earlier is the estate needs to put down cash and security, sureties, potentially bond properties. Now I'm raising these issues because in the next slide, I'm going to show you how we have a solution which is far more attractive. So I'm going to give you a quick summary, and then I'm going to go into a little bit of details. So very similar process as with a bank. You'll go to a solar installer. If you don't have a solar installer, you don't know the market, we'd love to introduce you to one or two solar installers that we work with, and we understand their business, and we've done our own due diligence. So a solar installer will give you a quotation. You'll approve the quotation, and then you'll come to us for finance. If our credit committee is comfortable with the credit worthiness of the property owner or the estate, we'll provide 100% finance. So we'll fund the whole project. You won't have to put on any equity. We won't have to sign any sureties. We won't have to bond properties. We'll fund the entire solution. We'll then make the capital available to the solar installer. They'll buy the assets. They'll install the assets. And just as with the bank, you'll then enjoy electricity. Now, where we differ is we'll provide 100% funding. Banks will only do around 70%. We offer between prime to prime plus 3, again, depending on the creditworthiness of the property owner. And this is the next point around the term is really the critical point that I want to get across is we can fund a project over 10 to 20 years. Now, although you may be paying more in interest over the period, the annual capital payments, depending on how many batteries you'd like, the annual payments are generally lower than the rand value of electricity produced by the system. So you may be paying us 500,000 rand a year, but the system is producing 750,000 rands worth of electricity. So this has a positive cash flow implication. You won't have to take money out of the bank account to pay for our finance, because the system should be producing, in many instances, more rand value of electricity than the payments to us. So there's a positive cash flow implication on the property owner. Deal turnarounds. Our deal turnaround is anywhere between 2 to 3 weeks, and normally shorter. At the moment, this is a very busy time of year. We're having investment committees twice a week, so we can turn a deal around really quickly. In fact, if we had a quotation, if we receive a quotation from a solar installer or from an estate today, within an hour or two, we'll be able to send indicative pricing. So you'll almost, definitely within the same day, know what the cost from our side would be. And this will put you in a position where you can compare our costs to what you're currently paying. And I can tell you, our rates are incredibly low, and I'll give you some more information in that around that in a moment. There is one downside of doing business with us, is because we fund the entire project, the security that we hold is the asset. So during the funding term, we are the owners of the asset. At the end of the term, you can buy the asset from us, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But this results in the property owner not being able to enjoy the Section 12B tax benefit. Now, for all the properties we're involved in, it's no different to them. They are looking to reduce their generator or diesel costs, reduce electricity costs. So the Section 12B benefit is not a deal breaker. So just to run you through what I've just explained is you'll engage a solar installer, or maybe you've already, and you'll get a quotation. You will then approach us. We'll do a credit analysis. In other words, we'll look at your financials over the last 3 years. We'll ask you some questions around the finances to understand what income is being generated and what the cost of electricity is currently being paid. Once approved, we'll make the money available to the solar installer. We'll sign a legal agreement. And normally with a bank, what you do is you sign a loan facility. We've got very similar agreement, but the legal framework is a power purchasing agreement. So we'll sell you electricity, not based on how much electricity the system produces, but based at a funding rate. So if we agree that it's prime, and you getting a facility of R1 million, as an example, we'll be selling you electricity at prime over however much you borrowed from us. So in that example, on R1 million, it would be 100,000 rand a year. Then the solar installer or the solar EPC, as it's called in the market, will do the installation, and they'll continue to do the operation and maintenance throughout the term, whether it be 10 or 20 years or 15 years, whatever you prefer. At the end of the term, you can own the asset. You can either own the asset for R1, or if you prefer smaller payments or lower payments during the term, we can structure the payments that there's a residual or balloon payment at the end, but it all depends on your preference. For us, it's neither here nor there, but ownership of the asset can pass to the state or the property owner at the end. So that's our first solution. We compete with the banks. We think our rates are, not we think, we know our rates are far better, far lower than the banks. That's our first option. Our second option, as I mentioned earlier, is, you may not be interested in getting involved in the intricacies around how much batteries, how much solar, and you just wanted someone else to deal with this problem. Well, we'll enter into arrangement either with a solar installer that you may have a relationship with. Obviously, we'll do our due diligence on them, or we'll introduce you to one. Together, we'll work with a solar installer. We'll put it together a full package around exactly what you need and the cost around that. And you'll get a very clear indication of what our costing is and how much you'll be saving and the benefits of the system. We'll present that to you. If you're happy, we'll sign legal agreements, the installation will take place, and we'll start producing electricity for you. Again, at the end of the term, you could, the estate could, or the property, the property owner or the developer can then buy the assets for R1 or whatever type of arrangement would make sense for you. So our focus really is on new solar installations, but we're also in the market to refinance existing solar installations. This happens in two instances. One is, listening to me now, you may realize that you're overpaying for a facility from a bank. We'd love to provide you with a proposal where we would refinance it. Or you may have an existing installation which is producing less electricity than you'd like, and you need to expand. Well, we'd either fund the expansion, or we'll refinance your existing and the additional assets that you may need. Quick summary of our funding mandate. We can only do South Africa. We fund projects between 3 and 40 million rand per project, or if they're a group of projects. So you may have multiple sites. Each site only needs 1 million rand. As long as the combined sites exceed 3 million rand, we look to finance. We offer 100% finance, as I mentioned. Our funding terms are 10 to 20 years, and our rate is prime plus. And that the plus is really dependent on the creditworthiness of the estate. We have what we believe is the fastest growing solar fund management team in the country. More than 50% of the people that you're seeing on the screen weren't even in our business 6 months ago. We've raised a lot of money, 500 million rand in the space, and we've got a really huge team. Our team is made up of 6 finance experts. It's led by my partner, Derek Hyde, who's an actuary. We've got 2 full-time lawyers in the business. They are there because they can just help getting deals over the line a lot quicker. We don't like outsourcing our legal requirements to law firms because they just take too long. So we'd rather have those capabilities in-house. So why Jaltech? Well, really, this is the slide that I showed you earlier. Our rates in terms of how much we can finance is better than the banks. Our interest rates is lower than the banks. Our term that we can finance is longer than the banks. And our deal turnaround, which is critical for you, is much, much, much quicker than the banks. And what I included at the bottom is an example. So we're financing a really large solar installation. There's no batteries. And the cost per kilowatt hour is 93 cents. Now, this is extremely low, and I've included it because you may know what your estate is currently paying, probably 140 or 150. If we can produce electricity for you at 93 cents, it really, really becomes a no-brainer. Lastly, we really have the lowest rates in the market. We've been running this competition for some time. If you've got a rate already with any finance house in the country, send it to me. If we can't beat it, we'll give you a bottle of Johnny Walker Gold Label. And this competition has been running for a long time. We haven't given a single bottle away because there hasn't been a rate which has come close to ours. So we're really confident that if you are looking for a financing solution in this market, there's no better partner than us. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John T. I just wondered, please, maybe could you keep your presentation slide up and go back to the costs, if you don't mind. So we've got a number of questions. So guys, if you are having problems sending your questions on the chat, please feel free to rather send the questions on the Q&A. I have a few that are coming in, and one of the ones I just want to ask first, which is coming from Hannes down in Pekinwood. And I'm sure this will relate to many of the community members that are here that represent homeowners associations. He is finding that board members are very conservative and don't want to commit the members to a longer loan period of 15 to 20 years. How do we overcome this barrier?
Okay, so ultimately the comparison, in my view, needs to be, what are you currently paying? If you're paying 200,000 Rand, as an example, a month in electricity, and going on a funding rate with us, and you're going to be paying half of that or 130,000 Rand, that's right now. In 3 years' time, when you were spending 200,000 Rand, in 3 years' time, you're going to be spending 300,000 Rand because of the rates that Eskom's going to go up. Our rates go up by 3 or 4%, and we're negotiable around the annual escalation, but it's really small. So you're going to be effectively paying us in 3 years' time maybe 150,000 Rand. That's the question you need to ask. I know it's a long time. 15, 20 years, it is a heck of a long time. But if the cost saving is an absolute no-brainer, then you need to consider it. And we can give you, as I mentioned, we can give you that estimate really, really quickly. So if you have a quotation, you can send it to me today. I can give you pricing almost immediately, and you can compare. If it's a no-brainer, then let's have a discussion. If it's not a no-brainer, then you probably don't even need solar. We can look at shorter terms. So if you want a 10-year term or a 7-year term, we're happy to do that. We're not, we're not stuck with 10 or 20 years. We prefer not to offer 5 years. There's a lot of work that needs to go into these type of deals to put them together. So we're happy to go down to 7 if that's going to, be of interest.
Thank you. I have another question coming in from Andrew Barton, who's out at St. Francis Lake. He's got a couple of questions, so I hope I get this right. His first question is, will there be maintenance whilst financing?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So when we provide a financing package, included in the finance is a maintenance payment to the solar installer for the entire duration of the asset. To remind you, because we fund the whole project without security, without sureties, without an equity contribution, because we finance the entire thing, we want to own the asset during the term. And now we want that asset to be looked after. It's our asset. If if unfortunate instance occurs and there's a default, the asset that we collect, we want that asset to be well maintained. So part of our finance is a maintenance payment, enough to incentivize the solar installer to do so. And the assets also get monitored on a daily basis in terms of electricity produced. And if we see a drop, then we'll notify the solar installer, and they'll go and maybe clean the panels or go and see what's happening there. But absolutely, maintenance is certainly covered throughout the entire term.
Okay. Andrew's second question is, what guarantees are in place that the system is in good condition when they take ownership, should they wish to take ownership?
Mm-hmm.
I suppose you sort of answered the first question, but
yeah. So
look at it.
As with any asset, after a certain period of time, they lose production capabilities and they have a lifespan. So in this instance, solar panels, depending on the ones you have, are 15 to 20 years. At the end of the term, we sell the asset to the state at 1 Rand. Now, if that asset lasts another year or 2 years, brilliant. If it doesn't, well, you've really bought an asset for R1, you've used it for its expected lifespan. So, our responsibility is to maintain it, which we will during the term and during the warranty period. So, if you wanted a huge battery component to your estate, we can do that, but we'll only finance it for the term that the batteries have a warranty. So normally what happens after a battery's warranty, they don't just stop working. Instead of storing 100% of the electricity, it only stores 60. So then you would need to, as an estate, decide whether you want to refinance new batteries. But 10, 15 years is a long time. Load shedding should be a thing of the past, but the cost of electricity will continue to go up. So the key here is how much electricity can your site produce in terms of your consumption needs.
Okay. Last question. Do you charge electricity used from the system being generated or take over a ESCOM account?
So we can do one of two things. Our preference is we charge an amount monthly, regardless of how much the system produces and regardless of how much you consume. That's our ideal scenario. What will happen is a solar installer will come, they'll spec out the system that you need, and then you'll need to make a decision. Do you want to pay a fixed amount, escalating slightly every year, regardless of how much the system produces and how much you consume? The other option is a consumption-based arrangement where you only pay for what you consume. So we are comfortable to enter into those arrangements. It's a more strenuous credit analysis. We need to have a better understanding of your consumption, and there might be certain risk mitigants that we put in place, but it is something that we do.
I have another question here. Is a national footprint? I can answer that question, Alan. Yes, the team does have a national footprint. A question coming in again is, what will the battery rental amount be per month if the batteries are included with the solar panels? I think it's all inclusive. Is that not correct?
Yeah. So the more so batteries are very expensive. The more batteries you have, the higher the cost is. That goes without saying. So it's important to get the right balance.
I have a question from a solar installer. Is Jaltech open to working with more solar installers, and is there a criteria?
Yeah. We work with a lot of solar installers, so we'd love to meet. Ideally, we only work with solar installers that have at least 5 years worth of experience, and we have a due diligence process that we follow. But yeah, we'd really be interested in meeting with every solar installer.
Okay, then just a few questions that came in before we actually had the event from, I think it was Gerrit. He wants to know about looking at this solar installation from a precinct level. So is there opportunity to get a number of different communities together that can create must be a microgrid? Please excuse me if I'm wrong here, Jared, misinterpreting your question. And then Jaltech comes in and funds the entire sort of setup, for the lack of a better way of saying it. Sorry.
Absolutely. So there's a community that we're assisting at the moment where there's an estate, there's a retirement estate, there's a frail care, all different entities. Where we're going to be building a microgrid and selling electricity to the various entities. They don't have to be part of the same group. So to answer the question, yes, we can offer that service. There's just regulations and rules around transmitting electricity, which we're not professionals, but the solar installers that we work with will understand this and advise us what to do. But to answer the question, absolutely.
Okay, then a question coming in earlier was for a business, for a solar business that is looking to help a body corporate get financing, Is there any sort of a requirements from both the company and the body corporate? So can a solar business come to you and say, I have a body corporate that's looking for financing. Are you available to assist?
80% of our business, or the deals that we finance, is through solar installers. So absolutely, the total value should exceed 3 million rand. And if it does, we would provide pricing. If the pricing is palatable, then we would need to do a credit analysis on the body corporate. So body corporates are a big part of our business. We've done a lot of body corporate financing solutions. So yeah, we'd love to price on that opportunity.
Just from a process point of view, with regards to NERSA registration and Eskom approval, who manages that part of the installation? Will it be the installer or the estate?
It would be the installer. The requirement from our side is just that the application is lodged. We're comfortable to finance pre-approval. Approval isn't a big issue. Obviously, we'll do this on a case-by-case basis, but just generally, we're happy to finance once the application is submitted.
Okay. Guys, I'm just watching our time. So talk about smaller complexes. I know you mentioned an amount of from 3 million rand. There had been a rumor that you were looking at projects smaller than 3 million rand. Is that true, or is 3 million rand a peg in the ground?
No, so we are finalizing a transaction with a large finance house where we'll provide them with funding, and they will then do credit analysis on deals under 3 million rand. So we're probably going to, the peg's going to probably be at 1 million rand. But I would imagine for most body corporates, there's a battery component requirement, which normally pushes it to exceed 3 million. But probably within the next 2 weeks, we'll be able to offer finance from 1 million rand and up.
Okay, so I think we've answered your question, Avril, there. What is the minimum amount that you fund? So currently it's sitting at 3 million, but there is, within the coming weeks, could we say that this will be restructured to bring in a lower amount? I see Avril's raised her hand. I'm sorry, Avril, I haven't got the sound set up, but please could you pop your question? I will in the question box, and I'll answer it. So just in the meantime, while she does that, let me just quickly carry on. Would the funding be subject to a pre-approval on a service provider? So if I have a service provider who has given me a quote, I have sent out a tender, and I've had a number of tenders come back to me. At what point would Jaltech then become involved in that side of the process? Or will the estate choose their solar installer and then come to you with the financing?
We're not, we don't have a business where we only work with certain solar installers. So as long as they have at least a 5 year 5 years of experience, and they're credible, and they've got a business that has been doing this for some time, they offer maintenance services, and we will most likely work with them. So we haven't seen a single deal where we aren't happy with a solar installer. So to answer that question, most likely we would work with them, but we need to meet with them. At what time, when do you engage us? You can engage us the sooner the better. So if you've got a quotation, it takes us really quickly to prepare pricing. Send us the quotation as soon as possible, and we'll give you a view. And then we can go through a process with the solar installer and understand their capabilities.
Okay, perfect. And then I'm sorry, I'm just making sure. To be successful with the estate, I must enter into a power purchasing agreement, which requires that they must take over the electricity network, which in most cases the network belongs to the municipality or Eskom. Do you have any experience in such a situation?
So the when I was mentioning the power purchasing agreement, I was worried I was going to create a little bit of confusion. So really the arrangement is one where the electricity is produced normally on the estate. So there isn't an involvement of the municipal line. If we were installing it down, if the estate had land a few kilometers down the road and we needed to wheel the electricity or transfer the electricity from the site 2 kilometers down the road to the estate, I would agree with you. Then we need to involve the municipalities. In this instance, we'd be producing electricity in the estate using the estate's transmission lines, which are owned by the state. So there wouldn't be any need to involve the municipalities.
Okay, so Abel's question here, with a 3 million rand funding as a sort of minimal, will you fund a bulk supply to distribute over the entire estate?
Yeah, absolutely. That's very common for us. So, when a state will really build a solution for the estate, so maybe a 1 megawatt plant, we would fund that, and then the state through the homeowners association may deal with administration around distributing the electricity and charging residents. That's very common, and there are a number of estates that are doing that.
Okay, I have coming in from Copperleaf. We have put an RFP out for solar installers. However, most of the service providers don't have funding. Will you still fund? Do you want to participate in the evaluation process?
Yeah, so we would definitely fund. That's our game. So once you've either approved or decided who you want to go with, all we need to do is see their quotation, and we'll provide you with a financing package, and then you can decide whether you want to go with us or not. So if you are still weeks away of approving them and you have a couple that you are thinking about and you want us to price on 2 or 3 quotations, it'll be the greatest pleasure from our side. So again, we're not tied to any solar installer. We are really just a financier. So if your estate is looking to roll out solar, we'd love to see how we could finance.
Fantastic. And then I just wanted to run through last few questions. So I'm getting a lot of requests for meetings to be set up with you, Jonty. For those who put that request in, I will definitely set the meetings up. If I could just also ask Tandu to share my email address in the group so that anyone wants to email me afterwards, if you don't have it already. And then I can introduce you to Jonty on email. Sorry, Jonty.
There's I haven't been following all the questions, but I see in the chat section there's a couple of questions.
Yes, we've been including those. Yes,
okay,
yes.
Great. Okay,
so
perfect.
I just want to quickly ask, this was quite important. So when it comes to funding, we've mentioned a lot batteries, we've mentioned a lot of panels, but I just want to understand clearly, when it comes to funding, you fund 100% of the project and all parts to that project. So I'm assuming if they want extra battery power, a solution around the irrigation for the estate, a solution at the guardhouse, et cetera, you would look at it comprehensively and include all of the aspects to make that project live. Is that correct?
Yeah. And just to rattle off a couple of things. So we'll fund the solar panels, the inverters, the batteries, the electric cabling, the support structures, and we'll fund all of it. What we won't fund is, we've had a strange request to fund the building of a guard hut. We need to fund the guard hut and then fund the solar panels. So we can fund the solar panels, but not the guard hut. We could fund the metal structures on the guard hut, but not the guard hut. So anything solar related, we can finance. If you onshore, just reach out to me, ask me the question, and I'll let you know straight away if we can.
Okay, just a question coming from Izal. Do you charge solar usage per kilowatt hour plus the battery rental and plus estate is responsible for COJ usage?
Yeah, so we're comfortable with really various forms of arrangements. So we could charge a kilowatt hour, and that is really a consumption-based arrangement where the state really pays us for what they consume. And then if for example the batteries run out, and then City of Johannesburg is needed to charge the batteries, all those type of arrangements can be factored in. It's really just part and parcel of what we do.
I also have an investor on the line here, Ian. He has two questions. I know one from earlier and one from later. So the one question is regarding at what point, from a developer's perspective, at what point could they approach you for financing?
So the ideal for us is once people have occupying the premises. That's our ideal. The other option, which you're not going to like, is we could fund earlier, but then we may require the developer to sign some form of sureties or guarantees of consumption, because what we can't have is an asset installed on a premises and no one paying us for electricity, no one consuming the electricity. It's a great sales angle for the developer to show that there's solar, but we need an income for these assets to be placed. So ideally, once occupation has taken place.
Okay. Another question just quickly coming in here. In the case where an estate has an old system of metering, with solar comes smart metering, would the smart metering installation be included in the solar, in the funding?
No, it wouldn't be. So that's a component that we can't finance. Smart metering is, I don't think it's particularly expensive, but no, we'd only be able to finance the solar portion of it.
Okay. And another question just coming in from Plentify. So they've got a really interesting product on the market. So would Jaltech be in the position to recommend other technologies to their consumers to manage load, such as load management solutions?
So we don't get involved in the solar technology aspect of any of this. So we'll either introduce the estate to a property owner and to a solar installer, and the solar installer will make a recommendation. We'll then finance it. We don't get involved in the technology side of things.
Okay, perfect. All right, and so just to clarify, you do, however, fund the project. You fund all of the aspects that go into the project. You can negotiate with the estate based on their, or with the sectional title development based on their security of asset around the rates and the duration of the contract. The opportunity to buy the solar infrastructure is there at the end of the contract. If the estate chooses not to buy the solar infrastructure and to continue working, to manage it on a different, I'm not sure how they would look at it, but perhaps they bring in a third-party solution to manage their solar maintenance. That is also a possibility. But once that term has come to an end, what the estate chooses to do with their infrastructure is really at their own discretion. Is there any other? We're down to our last 2 minutes. I've got Jonty, I will be doing, to those of you who have asked for introductions, I will be doing those introductions. Just checking all the questions here. Does Eskom allow feeding back into their bulk meter?
Mm-hmm. I guess it all depends on where you are and your meter. So my understanding, which is limited, is when you feed back into the meter, it just turns your meter backwards. So I'm not sure how that would work with an estate. Obviously, you get the credits, but yeah, that is an option.
I think the first part of that question was, is the solar basically still linked to your Eskom supply? I think that really depends on how you set it up, and that would be a discussion with your solar installer. and what your plan is, whether it's a microgrid or what your solution is. John T, am I correct in saying that you wouldn't necessarily involve yourselves with any of that type of processes? Yours is, you're purely the bank.
Exactly. The estate must decide what they want, and then we'll finance it. So we're not a bank, so we are agile. We can sit down and understand what structure is important to the estate, and we'll try and make it work. So we're very flexible. So happy really to discuss various type of systems and strategies, and whatever's needed to get allow us to finance the project.
Absolutely. Sorry. And my very last question before we log out is, we do have some investors on the line. Will you be doing a second 12B investor
Fund?
Yes. Will that be coming up quite soon? Can I?
It'll only be next year. So we launched our fund in June, and we are completely oversubscribed. So we even have investors on a waiting list at the moment. So we won't be taking any more capital this year, but definitely next year.
I just wish I had that problem. Yeah, that's the most wonderful problem I've ever heard. We won't be taking no more money this year. I think we're in the wrong career. I just see someone's popped up another one. Okay, so John T, would you be able to introduce some of their solar partners? And okay, no problem. That's we will set that up so that if there are some solar partners on this webinar, we'll also introduce you to John T, and you can take your discussions further with him. All right, folks, that's 45 minutes. And we will, of course, like I mentioned, we will introduce you to everybody that's requested an introduction. There's been a few meeting requests, and it really is worth just having maybe a one-on-one where you can really break down your own community and your own community requirements. I know that John T has been meeting with a number of community managers doing just that, and board members and committee members as it goes. So thank you so much to everybody who's attended today, and I hope that you found this webinar interesting. Thank you so much to John T for your time, and to Jaltech for your services to the industry. Tandu, if you'd like to play the recording, and I hope that everybody has a fantastic day.